This video will cover the Geometry Regents exam from January 2015, questions 35 through 37. Number 38 is the one and only 6-point question on this old exam. The new Common Core exams actually have 2 6-point questions, but on the old standards exam, we just have 1. So number 38 says, in the diagram below, right triangle RSU is inscribed in circle O. So you want to maybe take a second to just jot in that right angle, because it is, after all, a right triangle. And UT is an altitude drawn to the hypotenuse. Now, because it's an altitude, that also means that there's a right angle at T. The length of RT is 16 more than the length of TS. So if we know nothing about TS, I'm going to choose to call it X. And then if RT is 16 more than that, we're going to say X plus 16 is the length of RT. And TU is 15. So our goal here is to find the length of TS first, which is represented by the letter X. But as you'll notice, we have a huge, gigantic right triangle that's split up by this altitude. So with those right triangles split up with an altitude, we actually have 3 formulas, not 4, just 3. We call them Hall, Ass, and Leash. Notice that we have 2 pieces of information on any part of the formulas. If there's only one letter, then it must be squared. So the H stands for hypotenuse, A stands for altitude, S1 and S2 stand for segment, L1 and L2 stand for legs. And again, your focus is always on the big right triangle. So if we mark up what's given to us as H, A, L, or S, we have this altitude from the given, which can be marked as A. The hypotenuse is what gets split up into 2 segments. So we actually have S1, S2, which means that we're going to use A squared equals SS as our formula. So we're going to start plugging in. We have step 1, A squared equals S1, S2. So we have 15 squared equals X times X plus 16. So now we're going to factor. We're going to figure out what 15 squared is, which is 225. And it's equal to X squared plus 16X. Now this is a quadratic because it's equal, or not because it's equal, but because it has an X squared in it, which means we need to get this equation equal to 0. So we're going to do so by subtracting 225. 0 equals X squared plus 16X minus 225. So now we need to factor, still equal to 0, by doing a process called add multiply. To be successful doing this, you may need to list factors of 225 off to the side, such as 1 times 225, 3 times 75, 5 times 45, and 9 times 25. So then you go through this list and you say, okay, which pair is going to help me add to a 16? Definitely not the first one, nor the second one. The numbers are too widely spread apart. 45 and 5, that could help me either get 40 or 50. So that won't help. 9 and 25, that should work. So we have X with 9, X with 25. Because we're adding to a positive, the bigger number, the 25, takes the sign. And then the 9 becomes negative because we're multiplying to a negative. So here, the last and final step would be to do a t-chart, where we take each factor and set it equal to 0. And your goal is to solve for x. So add 9 to both sides and you get x equals 9. Subtract 25 from both sides and you get negative 25. Now we can't have 2 solutions here because we're talking about side lengths, and we can never have a negative side length. So what we do is cross it off and reject it, which means that x is equal to 9. So our final answer for the first part, find the length of TS, is to say that TS equals 9. So the first part's done, but we still have a second part to do. It says find in simplest radical form the length of RU. So here's RU over here. We don't know what it is, so I'll say that it's Y. I can't use X because X was already used. We found that X is the length of 9. And then X plus 16 is whatever 9 plus 16 is, which happens to be 25. Now we have this right triangle occurring here that might be helpful to help us find Y. Right triangle, this length is 15, this length we just found is 25. When you have a right triangle and you're missing one side, you can plug into the Pythagorean theorem, where the longest side opposite the right angle is your hypotenuse, going in for C. The other two sides go in for A and B. So now we have 25 squared plus 15 squared equals Y squared. So 25 times 25 gives us 625 plus 15 squared, which is 225, equals Y squared. 625 and 225 give us a total of 850, which is equal to Y squared. In order to get Y by itself, we have to square root both sides. But if you try to type in square root of 850, you'll notice that it gives you a nasty decimal, which is kind of the reason why they said write the answer in simplest radical form. So in order to write a radical in simplest radical form, you have to know your perfect squares. And those numbers come from multiplying a number by itself. Like 1 times 1 gives you 1. 2 times 2 gives you 4. 3 times 3 gives you 9. 4 times 4 is 16. 5 times 5, 25. 6 times 6, 36. 7 times 7, 49. 8 times 8, 64. 9 times 9, 81. 10 times 10, 100. And you could keep going. But what you need to do in order to find simplest radical form is find a perfect square that divides evenly into that number, 850, and then find the non-perfect square that gets multiplied by it. So you're going to go through your list starting at the back end because you want to find the largest perfect square. So take 850 and divide it by 100. Doesn't work. Take 850 divided by 81. Doesn't work. Well, it does work. It just gives you a decimal, and we don't want decimals here. 850 divided by 64, gone. Divided by 49, gone. Divided by 36, gone. But when we divide by 25, we actually get a nice number. 850 divided by 25 gives us 34. So the reason that I put the perfect square first is because this actually gets simplified. So now we have y equals square root of 25 is 5, and then attach the square root 34. So because we chose to call RU y, we now have our answer. RU equals 5 square root 34. So final answers, we have TS equals 9 and RU equals 5 square root 34.